So the first question, I think, I was trying to think through these kind of logically, and the first one, it comes with maybe a story that is maybe familiar to you guys, and it'll be a simple question at the end, so don't think it's a super complex question. But so, I don't know, picture a person who's come to faith, and they've been walking with God for many years, and they find over time that their friend group, or the number of connections that they have with people that don't know Jesus, shrinking over time. And now they've either shared their faith with all their family and friends, or all their family and friends are part of their church, or they are part of the family of God. And they're thinking, I wouldn't even know who to share my faith with, and I don't feel like I'm kind of geared towards talking to a ton of strangers. I want to have a personal connection and do kind of a relational approach. So it's like, well, what do I do? How do I make friends? And is it icky to try to make friends because I want to be able to share my faith with people who are far from God? Give us maybe, this is kind of a philosophical question, but how do you guys approach that kind of an issue, or that kind of a question? Or if there's a better question in there that I'm not asking, and feel free to answer that. But we'll try to keep these answers kind of brief, but do your best to hit it as hard as you can.
You want to take it? You want to take first?
Okay. All right. So I think the first thing I would say is to look around you. Who are the people that you are rubbing shoulders with? Granted, we're going under the premise that our social circle has kind of shrunk, at least those who don't know the Lord. But if you work and you don't work at a church, there are probably some people there who don't yet know the Lord. If you live somewhere, you probably have some neighbors who don't know the Lord. And so those are the places that I would start looking first. And I think that the first thought to have is, I want friends, and I want there to be a mutuality to these friendships. And as I am making friends, who I am and Jesus in me is going to come out naturally. And so for me, the number one way to feel like this is a person and not a project is to be willing to say to them, to be willing to ask for help. So with my neighbors, I have a neighbor who several years ago, we knew each other, but we weren't close. She was newly a single mom, and she said, hey, I hate to ask, but I wondered if maybe you could take my son to school in the mornings because I leave for work really early. And I was like, yes, I'd love to help. And so I was taking her son to school, but it wasn't until I allowed her to start bringing my kids home from school. I was taking her son to school, but she was picking her son up, and I was picking my kids up every day because I was like, I don't know, do I know her well enough to trust her with my kids? And it wasn't until I finally was like, this is ridiculous. We live across the street. We're both driving 3 minutes to the same school and home every day. We wave as we get out of our cars. Once I was willing to receive something from her and not just be the giver, that was what changed our relationship and made it a mutual relationship and made her one of my closest friends. So.
Awesome.
Mine's a little bit colder than that. I don't. John McCurdy's like, man, you confront everything or whatever. It's like, right. So for me, at my age, I see that shrink, the amount of strangers I know. But for me, what we would call cold evangelism, just going out and engaging people, is what keeps me alive. But also, we have a couple guys here and their families, Jed and Chad, who are part of a Tuesday night thing we've got going on. So discipleship, too, to give that away is a big thing. And these guys, when it comes to evangelism, they get the job done. I mean, they'll go out and debate people and confront people about who God is and whether he's real or not. So for me, that's how I keep alive is being with these guys, sharing this information, and these guys bang it. I mean, they'll butt onions with anybody. And for me, the whole the whole part of being able to go out cold is really something I tap into as well.
Yeah. So you can tell, we all have kind of our personal approaches, and maybe Cameron will ask us later, like which methods or models, ways that we've seen the most fruit in evangelism. But you'll probably hear kind of our heart and approaches throughout. And they're all unique, and that's okay. Like, they're not all supposed to look the same, because there's a lot of people out there who need Jesus, right? And he can come in different ways. So to answer this question, I would say if you're not around people that need to hear the gospel, that's kind of like, Jesus took a bunch of fishermen and said, I'm going to make you fishers of men. And if you're going to catch fish, you have to go where fish are. And so if you want to be a fisher of men, there's no way around it. You have to go to where people are, whether that's, walking across the street and to your neighbor, whether that's the person on the street corner that you're passing. So I guess my two things I want to say. One, you have permission to go and build relationships with people, or to go and talk to people for the sake of the kingdom. That's okay. They're not a project. They're the object of God's affection, right? So you don't want to find some reason to not go and share Jesus with people, or convince yourself, well, I'm afraid it'll turn them off, or I'm afraid of this or that or whatever, and then you hold the gospel in from people who need it. There's always a better reason to bring the gospel out than there is to hold it in. Sometimes you just have to find it. And the other thing I would say is, so first thing, you have permission to share the gospel. You're going to get it wrong at times. It's not going to work out the way you want at times. That's okay. That's how you learn. It was God's idea to choose a bunch of flawed people to do this thing anyway, right? So just say, hey, you picked me. Like, what do you expect? And then he'll teach you how to do it better. And the other thing I want to say is to take every opportunity and ask God, Lord, what's the best way that I could make you known right now? And that can go with whether, they're people that you're around long-term, family members or whoever, and when you interact with them, Lord, what's the best way that I can make you known right now? Or it could be with a checkout clerk or a drive-through attendant or whoever. Lord, what is the best way that I can make you known right now? And step into that, because sometimes in a long-term relationship, someone you live next to or someone that's a family member, they're not going anywhere. And it might not be the best thing to every time you see them just hammer them with Jesus, right? The best way to make him known might be to take their kids to school, or let them pick your kids up, or it might be to, just ask questions and listen and not say anything. But the person that you may never see again, the best thing might be, I need to make him known right now, and I need to not hold back. But letting the Holy Spirit guide you in that. We have a guide, we have a helper, and we need to learn to listen to him.
Yeah, so I think I had a couple of thoughts too, so I'll answer my own question a little bit. But are you going in with you need to check your heart. Like, are you going in with like a hidden agenda that you're hoping they don't find out what you're secretly trying to do? And if it doesn't pan out, you're going to like leave and kind of drop all the relationships and stuff because what you were trying to do didn't work out. Like, I think that's how it's perceived and reacted against negatively. This kind of like a way to approach this kind of problem. But it's like, are you trying to build relationships? Like Katie is like, where it's you just want to have good relationships and good friendships, and you're investing in that, and you're just being yourself. You're showing up and bringing everything that you have like for them. You're bringing Jesus. You're asking the Holy Spirit how to make God known. I think that's important. And I think if you're just looking for a context to get to know people, I listen to the KC Underground podcast, and they're always saying they do micro churches and similar things that we do. They're always saying, where does it make sense for you to be? Like, where do you belong, like, naturally? Like, a neighborhood is great. If you live there, you belong there. Like, that's where your house is. You're not going to – it would be a bad idea for me to go to a quilting club to try to meet people because that's just not who I am. So it's like I'm a fish out of water anyway. But if it's a group that's playing soccer and I show up and play soccer and build friendships, like I belong there because my heart's there. I want to do that thing. So connecting to people in ways that make sense and aren't kind of forced or weird, and I think that's helpful too.